The brother you're going to hear today is a master of reinvention. Get comfy and welcome to another episode of 365 Brothers. Welcome to 365 Brothers. Today, we have a farmer, a businessman, who has taken land that was in a family for over 90 years and has created for himself a business that brings food to the people. And you can find more information, by the way, at Tonytomato.xyz. It's exciting because he went from his business position, working in other fields, and then took this, which was at first just a side thing, and now has created a business. So with that, I introduce to you Tony White, farmer, businessman. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for the interview. Making me part of this great experience.
Thank you, Tony. I'm very excited about it, and all the more so because before taking this on, I really didn't have the experience of getting to know a lot of the Black men that are in my life or around my life. And so I'm delighted to have this opportunity for myself to get to know you a little better, and also for the listener. We're going to dive right in. What is your favorite song and why?
My music interest is very broad. I do love listening to Lauryn Hill. The Hamilton soundtrack has been something that I've been listening to for the last 2 years, and I seem to play it every time that I'm in the farm or in the field tending to my tomatoes or zucchini.
Is there a particular track on Hamilton that stands out?
I love them all, but one that stands out is I'm Not Throwing Away My Shot, because I just think that talks to me, and even though there's a lot of aspects of that song that really don't apply to me, but I just love what he was trying to communicate in there. Is like, listen, here is this shot. And I really equate that to me being in the farming world, right? So here it is, the opportunity to help develop in the St. Louis market, farm to table produce was here. I saw it, I jumped on it, and I really went out and secured a lot of good restaurants and chefs that are really trying to change the culinary world here in St. Louis. And I felt like that was my shot, and I wasn't going to throw it away, and I went in full steam ahead.
What is it about the production of farm to table that is your shot, like that it resonates so much as taking your shot?
Right. Our world is really small. You can bring a cucumber in from South America or hydroponically from Canada during the off seasons, because they're really doing some unique things to provide produce. And then you have the other layer of local, and that's what I'm involved with. Let's bring in local produce, because when you slice into that cucumber that's been produced locally, it's firmer, it's crisper. You definitely can tell the difference. My name, Tony Tomato, is based on the fact that I provide a red tomato all year long. So unlike my home state of California, where they send over gas tomatoes, they pick the tomatoes green and they send them over and they're trucked or bussed or however, and then they ripen as they get here, but they never really get red. But here in St. Louis today, when you cut into a tomato that I bring to the restaurant, it is red. It is just incredible. The flavor is there. And so that's what really the farm to table movement is about. That's what Eat Local is really all about. And I saw that as a void that was happening here, because there's so many popular restaurants that I used to walk into. I'd order a hamburger or a salad that they were trying to sell you for $15. You cut into it and you can see through it, or it was just like translucent, or the tomato was white. Tomatoes are red. And that's what I saw, and that's what I capitalize on in this marketplace.
I also love that it's green, in terms of protecting the environment by having it be local. And it's just nice to see a brother on the forefront of that as well.
Thank you.
So then, now we all have various wonderful childhood memories, but if you could only pick one to share, what's a childhood memory that stands out for you as among your favorite?
Spending time with my father as he went to work at night. My dad came from Oklahoma, very limited education, but he understood farming. He understood irrigation. California always, deals with droughts. But yet we still produce some of the best produce in the country for tree fruit. And my father's job was to maintain the water flow because, everything has canals and, you just can't let the water flow, unlike I have here in Missouri, but in California it is. And so those childhood memories was asking my father, can I go to work with you? Because that involved him going by the local deli, walking in, buying a loaf of white bread, buying a few slices of salami and bologna and cheese, and then going out in the field and working, and then taking that break and putting those sandwiches together, even the little French's mustard and stuff like that. Those are great childhood memories that I had, and I think those are things that I try to duplicate with my child when he comes out to visit me, my son.
What you're doing is part of the legacy of who your father was.
Right, and grandfather as well. It's just weird how you kind of gravitate to these things. He loved producing and growing everything. And like I said, he passed away when I was 6 years old. There's stories in the family that says, oh, he used to spend a lot of time with the grandfather in his field, eating his fruit that came from his trees, the peanuts that he had produced. He just lived off the land. I mean, he, had the produce. And then another relative had the pork. Another person had beef. Being around that and seeing that, I guess, is there. And if, you were to visit my home, and you'll find plum trees that represent California, peach trees that represent California that I grow in my yard, and even grapevine. I have raspberries, I have blackberries in my yard. I grow green.
I asked this question about accomplishments, and it's a two-part question. The first part is, what accomplishment is most important to you as you look back over your life? And then part two is, what accomplishment is the one that stands out to others?
So the biggest accomplishment that I had was completing my college degree. When I left high school, I've always been driven with this entrepreneurial spirit. I was very fortunate at 18 to become part of a minority ownership in a shoe business where we sold women's shoes, and then we expanded to men's shoes up in the Northern California area. And then that transitioned to, I really wanted to work for the telephone companies, but one of the challenges that I ran into was that I did not have the completed formal education. Now I had, 60 units put together. And in 84, the telephone company was broken up, and they had these regional bell companies that were created. That's where you saw Pac Bell,
I remember that.
Bell
Yes.
South, right? AT&T, you have a monopoly and you need to be broken up. That allowed the names, telephone numbers of people and businesses and telephone directories to be sold to anyone else who wanted to create a phone book. And so a person that I was associated with was out of San Francisco, was responsible for distribution, and he left the company to start this new Yellow Page company. And even though this Yellow Page company rates were a lot less than the telephone company, it gave me the ground, the experience to get in and get involved. However, even though I was making some really good money working for that individual, I kept seeing people come into his growing organization that had completed degrees, and I didn't. So in my late 20s, I walked away from a job that was making $60,000, $75,000 a year with bonuses to go back to college.
And this is in the 80s, which that money today would be like 100 and something thousand, mid 100,000s.
Absolutely. It would be equivalent today to being a salesperson for Google. Okay. I mean, that's what, the weight of what that company had. But again, the lesson that I learned is that, hey, this is great. You can make it to the ranks of management, but you have to be able to show that you have the fortitude to stay there. And it feels like you're always overlooked because you didn't have that degree. And so walking away from that job and moving to the Bay Area, going to bartending school and working in a bar Friday through Sundays, and then because I just needed a mindless job so I could concentrate on my education, that took a lot. Because remember, when you're making that kind of money, you have pocket money so that you can hang out at the bars, you can buy the drinks, you can go eat at the nice restaurants, you can wear the nice clothes, drive a decent car. So I gave all of that up to go back to college. And it took me another 3 years, the requirements knocked out, to go on to St. Mary's. And when I got into their business school, that was 18 months of just, solid focus. and sacrifice, and all of a sudden that was, I mean, it was a lifestyle change that I dealt with. But that was my biggest accomplishment, was going back into school, because now I had the sales experience. I was always a performer in that aspect, but now I've got the formal education and just a different approach, a different way that you look, because that's what college is all about. Now that allowed the opportunity for me to get hired by the telephone company in Arizona. And that led to sales. A short window later, I became a manager. I became a regional manager. And next thing you know, I was overseeing 14 states and the new launching of the internet product with that.
Wow.
So that was the biggest accomplishment. And that's what I try to tell my kids: stay in school, make the sacrifices, because it's easier when you don't have anything than to make that transition to go back to college.
Right. Well said. And I hope that there's some young person listening for whom that makes a difference.
Oh yeah, because you're going to see a lot of times where if you're in an organization and you're going head to head, you're looking at the sales ranking, the sales charts, because everything is measured these days, where you're really blown away this other person that you're competing with, but because they have that degree, people who own these companies really, in most cases, want to settle with a person that has that discipline, that show that, hey, you know what, I put my mind to something and I followed it through.
So
And so,
that's the one that stands out for you. What about that when shared, others are like, oh.
yeah, I think a lot of people are really surprised as to what I've done in this marketplace here in St. Louis, building up this farming business. It caught a lot of people off guard. It caught a lot of large purveyors off guard. And, that attention, I found myself really defending myself in a lot of different areas. I mean, I came in and took $1 million away from the marketplace. And so somebody felt that impact, and the people, the business that felt that the most, have come at me the most. And then every time I hear it, from chefs, well, I can't believe what you've done. I can't believe how you saw this. I can't believe how you just put forward, the effort to make this happen. So I would say that that's the accomplishment. But what a lot of people don't realize is that, your success doesn't happen overnight. It's a series of events, of just practices that you're involved with that make those things happen. I mean, we're dealing with COVID-19 now. Even though my business was, 90% based on restaurants development, I mean, sales, when restaurants were forced to shut down, I had to kind of reinvent myself. But one of the things that I've always have done is, and I've always really tried to avoid, years ago, selling to the residential, because I didn't think that there was enough volume that was there. But, what I have found is, and again, here's the college, piece. Okay, there's other people, there's many companies that are delivering produce boxes. So let's sit down and let's really think this through as to what we can come in differently, and what I have learned, through college, is that it's not having the lowest priced item. It's just providing great value.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when I came out with my produce boxes, they're different. I'm more expensive than everybody else, but I have people who tell me over and over again, I love what you're doing. I love the fact that you are offering things that are of value that I really want to eat. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I follow you on Instagram, and so I saw I saw that rollout, and I saw some of the reaction to it. You could see in their faces, you could see the joy and the delight receiving produce that was valued, in short.
Right. Yeah. Well, I live in a gated community. There's about 450 homes, and I was approached by one of the women that live in the community, and she's a real estate agent. She really gets involved with a lot of things in the community, and she approached me like the first 2 weeks of this epidemic or pandemic, and she said, hey, would you like selling to the homes? And my mindset was still selling to restaurants where you're carrying in several $100s worth of produce, right? And all of a sudden I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to try to put together a $30 basket for somebody. And no, that isn't going to happen. Okay. But I told her to let me think through this, and because I just needed to make sure I had a good plan, and that wasn't fast enough for her. And so next thing you know, a week later, hey, here's so-and-so produce company that's offering deliveries to our community. And, you can take the orders, and there was a lot of people that jumped on that wagon, and it was the beginning of the COVID-19, but he required everybody to leave their homes, come to the, drive the 2 to 3 miles to the front gate, wait in your car, and he was going to show up and drop all this stuff off. And I said, you know what? I'm about service. And so I let him go out, and I knew that my product was a lot fresher than what he was offering because he had a roadside stand. And if you can't turn your produce, right? And after the 5 days of not being sold, and those tomatoes became part of his kits. So I started seeing and hearing a lot of complaints about what he was doing. And I just said, okay, now I've got this thing put together, but how am I going to be different than what this other individual is? Well, I'm going to deliver it to your house. I'm going to charge a little more, but I'm going to deliver it to your home. And so there you have, one of the strategies that I've always have tried to live by is like, you don't have to be the first person to the game, but if you aren't, let's just make sure that your product, when you show up, is a lot better.
Be the best.
Right.
Better.
Value and service. Okay.
That's going to transition to my next question. What is a quote, a saying? What words are words that inspire you or that you live by?
It was the coach from Seattle, Carroll. Okay, Pete Carroll. And he says, I feel like something good is just about to happen. And that is the quote that's the tagline on my email that goes out. And I have another quote also, Robin. Yeah, Please. And it's from my mother. And she said that when you think that you're trying to figure it out, God has already worked it out for you. So again, both of those quotes really kind of relate to how I, view a glass of water, right? Or a glass, you heard the cliche, is a glass half full or half empty? Well, for me, yeah, it's half full because there's still so much more opportunity left to put, to fill this cup so that it runs over.
And then this is kind of the last question before we move more into the experience of being an African-American male. And that question is there a conversation, event, or a moment that stands out as life-changing for you?
Well, I would say that I was very young, but one of the things that I share with my kids is the struggle that we have with civil rights and what our forefathers have done to create opportunities for us today. Because in my lifetime, in reality, I remember the signs that said coloreds only.
Wow.
I remember the discussions about not being able to have a meal where you want, riding in the back of the bus, because of the scale of your skin, so that whole 60s civil rights movement, was incredible, and what you see what's happening today, I'm smiling, that the youth are stepping up and recognizing and trying to make sure that people are aware that as a person of color, whatever color, we're all the same. We all bleed. There really is no difference between us, except for some folks are given a greater opportunity than others. That would be the series of events that I would say is the most recognizable, or just the discussions that my mother had.
And it's funny because I was born mid 60s, and I don't have a recollection of some of the things you said. And I was born in California, but it matters that people know that there are people living today. Like it's not just a history book experience. This is,
right.
The experience of what it was pre-civil rights is still living today. And
absolutely.
I think a lot of people forget that, especially, I shouldn't speak for other people, but I think my age group, Generation X and Generation Y, we've just taken it for granted, that we lived post-civil rights. So right. I appreciate you bringing that up. And so in that, what is an experience for you, Tony, that highlights your experience of being a Black man in America?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's just been so much. I shared with my son just the other day that I was a product of busing. Now, even though this town of Tulare, California, at the time was only 14,000 people, it still was a California-based town. You had the east side, the west side, and you had this program that came in the 4th grade where they bused me from the community 2 miles to the other side of town. But even though I wasn't able to kind of hang out with all of the kids from the neighborhood, and it was myself and another, African American kid from the neighborhood that went to that school, just being able to get exposed to young little white kids, that we didn't see color. We were just there. And I was never called any derogatory names. We just, here's the class, we're here, and it's playtime, let's go play. But what I shared with my son was, in the fourth grade, getting invited to a birthday party, that was from the kids in the classroom, that was different because, even though we were from, marginal income and means, now I'm at, this builder's house, contracting person. He's putting on his birthday party for his kids, and there's horses, and there's food everywhere. There's ice cream, there's candy, there's soda pop. I mean, it's just like, wow, okay, this is pretty cool, and then engaging with that, and then hanging out with the judge's son, hanging out with the attorney's son, with the dentist's son. Getting exposed to all these people was probably the biggest memory that I had. When I see people talk about busing today, and I'm like, going, man, it was a great experience because I got exposed to a lot of stuff. Wanted to become a member of Boy Scouts. There wasn't a Boy Scout troop with, from my neighborhood, or actually Weeblos, Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Weeblos, Explorers, that whole, process from the fourth grade up until I was a senior. And I thought it was not cool to be part of that anymore, because I wanted to hang out. I got a car, and I have, a girl that I'm fancying, so, but still having that experience was great. And it set me up today where, there's so many things that I am involved with in my life because I was introduced to them through that other culture. So the more that we as a country can merge together and share these experiences, the better off we're going to be. I mean, there's a lot of people that are African American that snow ski, but I learned snow skiing over there,
There's a lot in the news right now about structural racism. They're talking about the economic costs of segregation and racism, and I understood immediately, how do you know what you can contribute without seeing the full range of opportunities and then finding that one that matches you? How do you know what's possible such that you can be inspired and motivated to go for that if that's not present, if it's not even in your awareness?
Right. Well, and here's the other thing I almost forgot. I learned how to play golf by, being associated with those kids that, in that community. Yeah. And what they taught me was the pillars of the community are on the golf course. Where decisions are being made at or by people who are on the golf course. So you need to learn this sport. It's business. You need to learn how to play it. You need to learn how to interact because, when you're playing golf for the first 3 holes, it's, hey, how are you? How are the kids? How's the wife or girlfriend? And then as you start getting deeper into the game, then the conversation becomes, well, how's business? And how can we help you? Or what are you looking for? Or you could be trying to, position something that you're trying to sell with them. It's just that connection because you have 5 hours with an individual on the golf course. And either you're not doing business with them, you're asking for their referrals or asking for an introduction to somebody like that. And that's, what people used to think that, oh, golf is a bunch of skinny kids, goofy kids. No, that's a powerful machine having access to that and those people. You can't do it playing tennis. You can't do it playing basketball, right?
No,
you can't do it playing football. Having that experience, getting exposed to that was a product of what busing. Now, of course, today you can go to any top golf place and hit golf balls and so forth. But to really understand what that is about, those are experiences that you gain by opening up your mind or being plopped into another environment. When you become proficient enough, or at least with your business, there's this whole concept called country clubs. Now, you want to talk about business getting taken care of and happening, join a country club.
And I hear cultural fluency,
Exactly.
Cultural fluency. At this point, I think the listeners have a pretty good idea of who you are, what you're about. What have your experiences with law enforcement been? Is there anything that stands out? And
you don't realize how many times that I've been pulled over and walked away without a ticket. because of the attitude, the respect that I've shown.
Yeah,
You
say
know,
more.
there's been times where, I'm 25 miles above the speed limit, pulled over, you give them the respect, because here's the reality. They're in control.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in control. Okay. I don't try to be confrontational with them.
Yeah.
They're in control at that moment. And if they decide that they want to, whatever, the less resistance that you are with them, the faster you're going to get out of that experience. Mm-hmm. Now, I've gotten tickets. Okay. Whatever. But let me just share this. We have attorneys in our family, access to attorneys. Yes. So if there's something that's crazy that this person has done, you just need to just be quiet and let him do his thing, because the attorney that you have for the family will fight that issue. Even though you may receive a ticket for speeding or whatever, your attorney has the ability to negotiate with the prosecuting office or with the other people to get that to a minimum sentence. I mean, I did receive one ticket. It's been 3 years. And I just called my attorney and I said, hey, can you handle this? And he goes, sure. And he got the ticket reduced to, just like a parking infraction. Paid the fine, paid him his money. So the system, right, is what we need to understand. And, the situation that just happened in Atlanta where the guy was asleep, in his car. Yeah, that was wrong. They should have never have shot him, but there were some things that he did, which was crazy. You don't break away and run, I mean, but
no,
it was also wrong for that police officer to shoot him in the back, because there was no threat that was there after the fight. Now, during the fight, but the policeman had already assessed the fact that he was not a threat. But again, what I had said to you is that through exposures, through contacts, through college, you have friends. Oh, you're going to law school. Great. Hey, let's hang out. Let's have a couple of drinks. Hey, we're buds. Hey, can I bounce this off of you?
Now's where I ask you this. If America was a woman, what would you say to her?
Rise up. Take care of your people.
I love that. Very clear. Which leads me to, Tony, what is love for you?
I've been in search for it still. So it's still undefined. I've been heartbroken several times. But, that's probably been the thing that's evaded me. Really true, deep love. Yeah.
What is it that it's like there's something there that you imagine it to be, right, or that becomes available. What is that?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. I'm still trying to answer that. I mean, I believe in love. But, I think you have to love yourself first. Okay. You have to be happy with yourself. You have to put yourself forward. And then the person that, that you are in love with also has to share the same similar ideas that you do, the same focus. But, you may find yourself, falling in love with the person, but then things can change, people change. And so, it just, becomes, but I guess you could say I'm a hopeless romantic. I believe in it, but I'm still searching for it.
Got that.
Okay.
Yeah. Better to always be looking, and you can't find it if you're not looking.
Also, as you start to mature, you become a little less tolerant of things, I guess. And that can be kind of a hindrance in one aspect, Yeah. That's a tough question, Robin.
I know. Well, it's tough for some and it's not for others, because,
right,
for some people it's, I've had people say things like, oh, it's acceptance. It's just, we're all, and let me be clear. Ask me today and it's a different answer than it was a month ago, which is a completely different answer than it was 3 years ago. And it'll probably be different if you ask me a year from now.
Right.
And that's the beauty of being human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, the first time, that I was in love with the person, there was an infidelity issue that happened on her part, which was really heartbreaking. She had a baby by another guy, and so going through that, you're a little jaded, right? After that, you're like, ooh, this trust thing, yeah. And then you go through a situation where you fall in love with the person, and then things start to influence and impact her. And then you kind of step away from that, right? And go, wow, okay, this is kind of not what I see this as, but I'm going to stay with this as long as I can. You got to make hard decisions, right? And then another time, and now all of a sudden, now you're blending together a couple of different families, and there are a lot of different dynamics that are going on with that environment. And you find yourself, you're trying to fight to kind of make sure, and then the tensions arise and you kind of fall out of that situation. That's kind of been the stories of love, for me. It's like, okay. But I'll say this, though.
Yes, I'm listening.
Here's another quote from my Aunt Dolly. She says, you keep doing it until you get it right. So there you go. So
I like that.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, one of the things you dropped that I think is a gem is that you said, it's a lot of hard decisions. And the difference between, love being present or love not being present, it's choice after choice after choice. I think that those two words, hard decisions, I think that, at least I'll just say it speaks to me. I'm not going to say it's anybody else's truth, but that speaks to me. Is there anything we didn't cover about you that challenges the stereotype of what it is to be a Black man in the United States?
Things are softening up a little bit more now, but I live in a pretty rural community. There was, now, Missouri is the average cost of a house is very low in this area. I mean, which makes it very attractive. I mean, it's very affordable. You're centrally located. But anyway, I decided to move into this gated community, and I just recently found out that there's 450 homes out there, and there's only 2 people that are Black that are there. I want to stop and just say hello to him. But the point is, and the stereotype that you get fixed with is that, even though I'm a single person living in this home, there was some chatter. Oh, he must be selling drugs. He can't, wait, he sells tomatoes? No, he must be laundering money. So rural America still has a hard time embracing, and let me just put it like this. Not all rural America is like that, but there's a segment of folks like that may think that our success as African American people has been based on doing illegitimate business dealings, right?
Yes.
And then, I had something that was shared with me recently, and I'm going to, as a Black person, and I'm dark chocolate, you have to always put yourself in a positive light and not seem threatening or walk around with a frown on your face, right? Because for the most part, the people that we encounter for the first time, this may be their only real interaction with a person of color. Now, there's a little neighborhood bar that's shaped, like a trailer. And, many of my friends from the city would see this and laugh and go like, what the H is that place, But it's where the community resonates at, right? When I walked in there for the first time, you should have seen the look in their face. It was like that movie when Eddie Murphy walked into the bar and asked for a Black Russian or a white Russian. It was the white Russian that he asked for, But here's the power of forgiveness, and here's the power of remaining positive, right? And I had a friend tell me later, she goes, you're there, you interacted, and then, all of a sudden now they know you, so now you're okay. But before, the message was, oh, well, what's he doing here? He doesn't belong here. But how do you overcome that, right? Because we're here, as stewards of a race to make sure that we set a positive example for people, and I didn't get a chance to say this a little bit earlier, but, a lot of my business success, the home business that's getting me through this COVID piece, really has been about giving. So I would come into the bar and I'd come in with a case of tomatoes. And in Missouri, I know that people like tomatoes. They love tomatoes here for the most part, right? So here it is in December, and I've got this great tomato. Okay, so I'm using this as the olive branch, right? Here, do you like tomatoes? Well, you try this. You take this. You take this. Ooh, take a bite. Ooh, here's for you. You take it home to your wife, okay? Planting those seeds has changed the perception of people. Now, prejudice is deep rooted. It's learned. It's in the household. But I still feel like there's a lot of people that are white that won't use the N word. They, because their parents told them you better not. You better not ever use that word. And so I think our world is on a positive track. We got it's turbulent right now, but on the granular level, you got a lot of people that are making those changes that are a lot more accepting. And like I indicated to you, I've done things to break down those barriers or remove what that stereotype is, because they don't know, because they've never dealt with somebody of color.
Is there anything that you see newly or differently?
What I like is the fact that you're addressing this issue, and you're creating an archive. And hopefully there'll be some young person that listens to this and is able to take away that I can do whatever I put my mind to. I mean, this is still America, and this is one of the best places to live. We are here, and we have the ability to pursue our happiness. Just get out there and do it. Be yourself. Present yourself well. Okay.
Yes.
Be a positive person. Influence. Join the community. Join your church. Join the Chamber of Commerce. Learn how to play golf. Get involved with networking groups. There's one out there called Business Networking International, BNI.
Yes, I've heard of it.
They'll hold you accountable on a weekly basis, and they're all about networking, because what you know is important, but it's also who you know and who they know. I appreciate the fact that you reached out to me, and I hope someone listens to your podcast and they're able to really understand that, hey, I can do this. There's nothing holding me back except for myself. Get your education, get the exposure. Don't stop dreaming.
Well said. And Tony, thank you for being an ambassador of opportunity.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for listening. As you can hear, you do not want to miss any of these brothers. Make sure you subscribe. You can find more at our website, 365brothers.com, 365brothers.com. This is Robin Shine. To listen is to love.